The airport's three-runway system officially goes into operation tomorrow. A ceasefire deal between Israel and Hezbollah takes effect. And reactions to Donald Trump's pledge to impose tariffs on goods from Mexico, Canada, and China. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. The airport's three-runway system will officially be commissioned tomorrow. Speaking to TVB News, Fred Lam, chairman of the Airport Authority, said they have set sights on ratcheting up the airport's maximum passenger volume to 120 million passengers per year. But the target to achieve that figure is around 2035 to 2040, later than the original plan. This center runway, formerly the North Runway, is poised to be reopened, and that is set to mark the official launch of the city's three-runway system, alongside the South Runway, mainly for takeoffs, and the new North Runway, the main aircraft landing zone on the newly reclaimed site. Currently, the airport's flight usage has returned to about 90% of pre-pandemic levels, with peak hours between 8 a.m. to noon, with full recovery expected in the next quarter. The North and South runways have reached its full capacity with 70 flights per hour. Speaking with TVB News, Fred Lam, chairman of the Airport Authority, said their target to have the three-runway system handle 102 flights an hour remains unchanged. In the first 6 months of the three runways operations, the maximum capacity is set at 75 flights an hour. When asked if the separation of airspace between Hong Kong and the mainland would stymie runway capacity, Lam cited improvements in recent years of airport systems and facilities, including navigation and aircraft movement technology. He said they all help raise the runway capacity, even with Hong Kong using just its own airspace. The three-runway system comes with a price tag of $140 billion. Currently, each departing passenger has to pay an airport construction fee of $90 to $180. The Airport Authority said the fees are here to stay until the debt from the third runway is cleared. Meanwhile, under a new incentive scheme in place since June, 26 new airlines have been introduced to Hong Kong with 52 new destinations. The new Zhongshan passenger port will open tomorrow. The facility is set to cut the journey time between Zhongshan and Hong Kong by 20 minutes, with discounted ferry tickets priced as low as $1 on the first 3 days of its opening. Spanning 65,000 square meters, the new Zhongshan passenger port boasts 12 berths. It will operate 3 routes to Hong Kong International Airport, China Ferry Terminal in Tsim Sha Tsui, and Shenzhen's Shekou Port. The journey time takes around 50 to 65 minutes, slashing travel time by an average of 20 minutes. Zhongshan authorities said the old port ceased operations starting today. They will also explore new routes to Taipa in Macau and islands off Zhuhai with integrated development of the low altitude and cruise economies. Former media tycoon and founder of the now-defunct Apple Daily, Jimmy Lai, today continued taking a stand to defend himself against national security charges. Lai faces 2 counts of conspiracy to collude with foreign forces and 1 count of conspiring to publish seditious materials. The trial resumed at West Kowloon Court this morning. On day 97, the defense asked Lai again about his meeting with former U.S. Vice President Mike Pence. Lai asked his assistant Mark Simon also attended the meeting. But in his talks with former U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Lai went alone. The defense asked Lai if he had commented in a podcast that the U.S. could impose sanctions against the repressors of Hong Kong. Lai said if it was so reported in an Apple Daily article about the podcast, then he would have said it. Peter Wong, the current non-executive chairman of HSBC, is set to become council chairman of the University of Hong Kong. His 3-year term will begin on January 1st. The 73-year-old Peter Wong is taking over the position from Priscilla Wong, who has chaired the governing body since 2016. She will finish her term at the end of this year. The appointment came amid concerns over the university's governance and rows between the council chair and HKU president and vice chancellor Zhang Xiang over issues such as the appointment of vice presidents and allegations of mismanagement. The tensions prompted chief executive and HKU's chancellor Zhang Li to establish a task group to look into the matter. Under the government's latest proposal, landlords in Hong Kong could face a maximum penalty of 3 years in prison and a fine of $300,000 if they continue to rent out units that contravene stipulated housing standards. The public consultation period for the policy will begin next Monday and last until February 10, 2025. Chief Executive John Lee proposed in October's policy address to regulate the city's 110,000 subdivided units. These units must meet requirements including the provision of windows, an individual toilet, and a floor area of no less than 8 square meters. Units that follow such standards are called basic housing units. Owners of subdivided units can register with the government, and they will be given a grace period to upgrade the flats. After the deadline, owners who continue to rent out substandard units will be held criminally liable. According to a document submitted by the Housing Bureau to the Legislative Council, the administration will also study the feasibility of imposing higher penalties on cases that rent out substandard units for a long period of time. A fire broke out on a sound barrier screen on Chengpeishan Road in Chunwan. Police have classified the case as arson. The fire erupted at around noon at an intersection on Chengpeishan Road near the lane heading towards Chunwan. It took firefighters around half an hour to put out the blaze. At Shekwai Estate, near the site of the fire, a female resident of around 70 years old experienced discomfort after inhaling the smoke. Preliminary investigations found the cause of the fire suspicious. Thousands of people in Lebanon and Israel are going back home after a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah went into force. The presidents of France and the United States announced a 2-month truce, which they hope can be permanent. David Garrett reports.
No explosions, smoke or Israeli attacks in Beirut. Inside Israel, Haifa is quiet. No sirens. The Hezbollah rockets have stopped. Traffic flowing across Lebanon as hundreds of thousands of people displaced by war finally head home. Hezbollah supporters in Tyre wave flags free from fear. Quiet on the border between Lebanon and Israel too. The Hezbollah-Israel ceasefire is in place and it's holding. It started at 4 a.m. local time. Until that moment, Israel was still bombing targets in Beirut. And in Israel, cleaning up after a late rocket attack hit a bus station near the border. Several vehicles were damaged. Israelis have also been displaced, with rockets raining down for more than a year. Israel says it reserves the right to strike in Lebanon again if Hezbollah breaks the terms brokered by the US and France.
Qu'il le soit dans la durée.
French President Emmanuel Macron urged all parties to build a lasting truce. He said Lebanon must start a new page with a new president. US President Joe Biden, making the announcement, said Israel did not start this war. The Lebanese people didn't ask for it, and the US never wanted it.
The fighting across the Lebanese-Israeli border will end. Will end. This is designed to be a permanent cessation of hostilities. What is left of Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations will not be allowed, well, I emphasize, will not be allowed to threaten the security of Israel again. Over the next 60 days, the Lebanese army and state security forces will deploy and take control of their own territory once again.
Biden says he hopes to use the momentum from this deal in Lebanon to relaunch a last-ditch diplomatic push aimed at ending that war in Gaza. But already Netanyahu is signaling resistance. He says that Israel will continue with its campaign in Gaza until it destroys the Hamas militant group. That does not bode well for Biden's diplomatic initiative, and it also signals continued uncertainty for the people of Gaza.
In Gaza, there is still war, devastation and desperation. Mamdouh fears things will get worse as Israel plough more of its military resources into the enclave. A ceasefire in one place but not in another, Ahlam asks, have mercy on the children, the elderly and the women. David Garrett, TVB News.
And still ahead, customs officers seized 16 kilos of space oil at the airport and arrested 7 people. And 2 giant pandas gifted by Beijing will greet the public on December 8th. Bolivia said it has signed a $1 billion deal with a leading Chinese company to build 2 lithium carbonate factories in the country's southwest. It's part of a growing trend of Chinese companies seeking investment opportunities in South America. The agreement is with China CBC, a subsidiary of CATL, which is the world's largest producer of lithium batteries. The South American country's state-owned Bolivian lithium deposit said the plants would be built in the vast Uyuni salt flats. The two factories will have respective annual production capacity of 25,000 and 10,000 tons of lithium carbonate. Lithium is a key component in the production of batteries for electric vehicles and mobile phones. Bolivia claims to have the world's largest lithium deposits. An Australian police officer who fatally shocked a 95-year-old care home resident with a taser gun has been found guilty of manslaughter. Christian White was called to a care home in the town of Cooma, 90 minutes south of Canberra in May 2023 after reports that a resident was acting erratically. Claire Nowlin, who suffered from dementia, was holding a steak knife at the time she was tasered. Nowlin, who was known for skydiving on her 80th birthday, later died in hospital. A jury found White guilty of manslaughter after deliberating for almost a week. He is expected to be sentenced as early as this week. Manslaughter carries a maximum sentence of 25 years in prison in the state. Back locally, customs officers have arrested 7 people on suspicion of possessing etomidate. Etomidate is the main ingredient of space oil, which has quickly become a popular drug among young local users. Mimo Sangai reports.
Customs officers seized 16 kilos of suspected etomidate powder at the airport among parcels flown into the city this month. Etomidate is an anesthetic that can only be prescribed by a doctor and is regulated as Part 1 poison under the Pharmacy and Poisons regulations. The seized powder can be used to produce about 48,000 space oil-infused capsules with a street value of about $17 million. Authorities arrested 5 men and 2 women, aged between 23 and 48, during the operation. Among the arrested are primary school teachers and cooks. Speaking to the press, Hong Kong Customs said officers had used a Raman spectrometer to detect the etomidate powder, which was hidden in 8 express parcels flown in from India. Authorities said this was the first case of its kind.
The Raman spectrometer utilized the laser scattering technology, with a laser beam penetrating the container and hits the sample. Could identify the powder as etomidate by distinguishing its light refraction spectrum. Our officer can identify whether a sample is a prohibited article within a very short period of time.
Space oil has become popular among young drug abusers. Authorities said they have stepped up enforcement actions.
Our enforcement in November demonstrates the strong determination of Hong Kong Customs in detecting the crimes relating to etomidate or space oil.
The Customs Department urged parents to keep an eye on their children to check for any unusual behavior or for money transactions that may be related to space oil. Memos 9, TVB News.
2 giant pandas gifted by Beijing, Anan and Keke, will greet the public on December 8th. Chief Executive John Lee confirmed it on his social media page. The announcement came after John Lee and his wife visited the Hong Kong Jockey Club Sichuan Treasures at Ocean Park, which houses Anan and Keke. The city leader said the 2 giant pandas are energetic and active. The park said the pandas have adapted well to their new home. A ceremony for the unveiling of the bears will be held jointly by the government and Ocean Park on December 7th, before their pavilion is open to the public the following day. A total of 22,600 submissions were received for a panda naming competition. The results will be announced at the unveiling ceremony. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.